Books of the Bible, books of the Bible, books of the Bible, let the true light shine.
Destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Genesis chapter 19.
Abraham's nephew Lot and his family had chosen to live on a fertile plain in a city called Sodom. The people there were very wicked, as were people living in other cities nearby. Two of the strangers that had visited Abraham were angels sent by God to destroy these wicked cities. The two angels, looking like men, made their way to the city of Sodom, where Lot lived with his wife and 2 daughters. Lot was sitting by the city gate. Lot bowed down when he saw the 2 strangers and invited them to stay at his house. "No, we will spend the night in the square," they replied. But Lot insisted they stay at his house. Lot prepared bread made without yeast and gave them a meal. News of the 2 strangers' arrival had spread through the city, and all the men, young and old, surrounded Lot's house. The mob demanded the 2 men be handed over to them. Lot went out to the mob, locking the door behind him. "No," he shouted, "don't do this wicked thing. They are my guests." The men surged forward to break the door down. The 2 angels reached out and pulled Lot back inside and closed the door. Then they struck the men outside with blindness so they could not find the door. "Do you have any relatives in this city?" the angels asked Lot. "The wickedness in this place is so great, the Lord God is going to destroy it." Lot went to find 2 local men who were pledged to marry his daughters. "Hurry and get out," he warned them, "the Lord is about to destroy this city." His future sons-in-law thought he was joking and would not leave. As dawn approached, the 2 angels urged Lot, his wife, and daughters to get out of the city. "Hurry," they demanded, "or you will be swept away when the city is punished." When they hesitated, the angels grabbed their hands and led them out. "Flee for your lives," one of the angels ordered. "Don't look back. Head for the mountains and don't stop anywhere on the plain." "You have shown great mercy in sparing my life," Lot told them. "But I can't flee to the mountains in time, and I will die. Look, there is a small town near enough for me to run to. Let me flee there to shelter." "Very well," the angels replied. "That town will be spared, but get there quickly." As Lot reached the town, the Lord sent burning sulfur on the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. The entire plain was engulfed with fire, volcanic fumes, salt, and ash. Lot's wife, however, ignored the warning not to look back. She was covered with burning sulfur, ash, salt, and fumes. Her dead body looked like a pillar of salt. The Lord spared the lives of Lot and his 2 daughters, who sheltered in the town of Zoar. Early the next morning, Abraham looked down over Sodom and Gomorrah. He saw dense smoke, like the smoke from a furnace, rising all over the plain. God had destroyed the wicked people that lived there, but spared his nephew Lot.
Abraham and Isaac. Genesis chapter 21 and 22.
God had promised Abraham and his wife Sarah that they would have a son, and their descendants would become a great nation as numerous as the stars. The problem was that both were now too old to have children. Abraham had become so desperate to have an heir that he had a son, Ishmael, by Sarah's servant Hagar. God promised that Ishmael's descendants would become a large nation too. When God said Abraham would have a son by Sarah, Abraham had laughed to himself as he was so old. When Sarah overheard 3 visitors sent from God say that in a year's time she would have the son God had promised, she too laughed in disbelief. It was impossible for them to have children now. Yet the Lord was kind to Sarah and kept his promise. The next year, miraculously, Abraham and Sarah had a son. Abraham, who was now 100 years old, gave his newborn son the name Isaac. Isaac means he laughs. Abraham lovingly watched his son grow from being a baby into a young boy. God then decided to test Abraham. "Take your son who you love, Isaac, to the region of Moriah and sacrifice him on a mountain which I will show you." Abraham knew God would not want him to kill his son. It was against God's law, but he also knew he must trust and obey God. The next day he cut enough wood for a burnt offering, loaded up a donkey, and then set off with 2 servants and Isaac on a journey towards Moriah. After traveling for 3 days, Abraham saw the mountain in the distance. He instructed the 2 servants to wait while he and Isaac went up the mountain to worship God. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on Isaac to carry while he carried the fire and the knife. On the way Isaac asked, "Father, the fire and wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham replied, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering." The two of them continued their climb to the top of the mountain. At the top, Abraham built an altar and then arranged the wood on it. Then he bound Isaac and laid him on the wood. He reached out his hand and took the knife. Abraham! An angel of the Lord put a stop to the test. "Do not lay a hand on the boy. I know you fear God because you have put him before your only son." Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught in a thicket by its horns. He took the ram and offered it as a burnt offering instead of Isaac. He then named the place, "The Lord will provide." The angel then spoke again, "As you have not withheld your only son, God will bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars and as the sand on the seashore. Through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed because you obeyed me." Abraham and Isaac then returned to the waiting servants and set off south to Beersheba, where they stayed.
A wife for Isaac. Genesis chapter 24.
Abraham was now a very old man and his wife Sarah had died. She was buried in a cave at Mamre at Hebron in the land of Canaan that Abraham had bought from the Hittites. God had promised Abraham and Sarah a son and that their offspring would become a great nation. When Abraham and Sarah were too old to have children, God miraculously gave them a son whom they named Isaac. Isaac was now a young man and Abraham was determined that his wife should not be chosen from the Canaanite tribes living nearby who did not worship God. Instead, Abraham wanted Isaac to have a wife from among his own people who did worship God. But they lived many hundreds of miles away in the land of Mesopotamia. Abraham summoned his senior servant and said, "I want you to swear by the Lord God that you will not get a wife for Isaac from the daughters of the Canaanites but from my own relatives in my homeland. You cannot take Isaac, as he might settle there instead of in the land of Canaan that God promised to our descendants." Abraham's chief servant promised to obey. He took with him 10 camels loaded with all kinds of gifts from Abraham. He set out for Aram Naharaim and made his way to the town of Nahor. He made the camels kneel down near the well outside the town. It was towards evening, the time the women go out to draw water. Abraham's servant prayed, "Lord God, make me successful today. May it be that when I say to a young woman, 'Please let down your jar that I may have a drink,' and she says, 'Drink, and I'll water your camels too,' let her be the one you have chosen for your servant Isaac." Before he had finished praying, Rebekah came out with her jar on her shoulder. Her father was Bethuel, who was related by marriage to Abraham's brother Nahor. Rebekah was very beautiful. She went down to the spring, filled her jar and came up again. The servant hurried to meet her and said, "Please give me a little water from your jar." "Drink, my lord," she said. After she had given him a drink, she said, "I'll draw water for your camels too, until they have had enough to drink." When the camels had finished drinking and the servant had found out Rebekah was from the family of Abraham, he took out a gold ring and 2 gold bracelets and put them on Rebekah. Then he asked, "Please tell me, is there room in your father's house to spend the night?" Rebekah replied, "We have plenty of straw and fodder, as well as room for you to spend the night." Then the servant bowed down and worshipped the Lord for answering his prayers. Rebekah ran home and her brother Laban returned to fetch Abraham's servant and the camels. Abraham's servant would not eat until he had told Rebekah's family why he had come and how God had answered his prayer. Rebekah's father, Bethuel, answered, "This is from the Lord. Here is Rebekah, take her and go, and let her become the wife of Isaac, as the Lord has directed." Rebekah's brother and her mother wanted her to stay for 10 days, but the servant insisted they left right away. So her family blessed her and Rebekah and her attendants traveled south to Canaan. Isaac was in a field when he saw the camels arriving. Rebekah covered her face with a veil. Isaac married Rebekah. She became his wife, and he loved her.
What is your answer? 1. What was the name of the city that Lot chooses? 2. What is the meaning of the name Isaac? 3. Where did Eliezer meet Rebekah?